Hi, everyone. My name is James Yarbrough. This is for my EDIS 535 Spring 2018 Job and Living Environment Assessment project. And I just want to go through a couple of these things with you and explain to you the process that I took and the outcome of my project here. Talking about the transition assessment results and some of the things I did with the student. We start off using Ohio Means Jobs as career exploration, and also to find out just some very rudimentary things in terms of the career clusters and what he may have an interest in. We did an interest inventory, and we also did a skills assessment to see what best fit for him. And some of those outcomes that I came up with where the student had been exposed to career exploration earlier in his high school career. He was involved in a few programs where people came in and talked about different careers that he told me about. The student also found that he enjoyed working with his hands and problem solving, which was news to me in terms of working with his hands and problem solving. He really gets excited. He's not academically driven, but given the chance to work with his hands, he does have a different persona about him. The student also had some knowledge of businesses that offered some of the careers that he was interested in, and that was based upon some of that earlier career exploration in high school that he got. He also wanted to explore some different trades through a program called OTAP, which stands for the Orientation to Trade and Apprenticeship Program, and it's a program where students can learn about all different areas of the trades, all the different things that are offered, from welding to being a highway construction worker, to machinery, to electrician, to carpentry. So he's actually involved in that program right now and really seems to enjoy it. And we were also able to match the student's strength to some of the requirements for a trade apprenticeship program, which excited him that he had a skill set that was valued through that assessment result. Some of the identified areas of interest for the student just talked about a little bit. The two that he really seems to enjoy was carpentry and electric work. And those two kind of go hand in hand. With the carpentry in the OTAP program, he really has a hard time in math, but actually using a tape measure, he was able to understand it and have an application for the mathematics. And it was something that one of the instructors said he had a natural skill at, was using the tape measure, which, for someone who doesn't really want to or doesn't really care for math or struggles with it a little bit, excited me and him. Based upon the student survey and the transition assessment, the student wants to pursue an apprenticeship in one of those two areas. So we kind of researched those things, and we started to align the skill set with the career requirements, which seemed to be a very, very good match at the time. Reflecting on the collaboration with the student and reviewing the transition assessment, this was a eye-opening process in terms of me just trying to let the student lead the way and not interject my thoughts or feelings into anything. And he asked me a lot of questions. He asked for a lot of feedback through the process. And it was difficult not to lead him in any direction, but to try to put it back on him to figure it out for himself. During the process, the student and I learned what he excels at and how to help him apply those skills. And I just gave an example of him using a tape measure and his precision with it, which is something that he was really, really good at. And that's a trait that the trades are looking for. There are also many careers that you can do very well at in the trades without going to college. But one of the things we talked about is that you still have to do continual learning to get a certification, to complete your apprenticeship. And if you want to move up in any position with the trades, you may have to do some schooling, but it's not like traditional schooling. It's more in a hands-on manner. And some community colleges offer these types of courses as well as technical schools. So, there's no way to get around that hurdle of education as long as he wants to continue to grow in whatever field he chooses. The job description and employee reaction. The student decided to explore the trades as an option for after high school employment. Again, it was in the field of electrical or carpentry. And what he decided was that, a great place for him to start would be to focus on working in a secure position as an apprentice. And what that is you're actually doing hands-on learning, and it's a 4-year process. So you're going to do hands-on learning with someone who's training you for 4 years. There are tests that you have to pass to get your certification, but you'll be completely prepared to do that while you're on this 4-year apprenticeship. The other thing that appealed to him was that during this 4-year apprenticeship, he's actually getting paid to do it. So he's actually working for a company. I think he has to have 2,000 hours of work in, and then there's so many hours of education that he has to have in to fulfill that apprenticeship. But he liked the idea that he could get paid, and his pay would go up every year. So during that 4-year process, his pay would go up every year until he completed his apprenticeship and became a fully licensed tradesperson. But interviewing potential apprenticeship partners really helped the student to understand the lessons ingrained in high school and how they transfer to the working world. The need to be on time, treating people courteously, and respect and following rules. And I kind of just tied it in that those are some of the soft skills needed to be successful in any job that you have. And that's why teachers are asking you to do certain things while you're at school. No matter what position or job you get, you're going to be asked to follow the rules. And it's just a decision you have to make if that's something that you want to do to be successful. But from the employer's standpoint, the employer really impressed upon me that, they wanted people who were trainable. And sometimes if a student has went to a technical school or a trade school, they have to unlearn some bad habits or things that are now obsolete and on how not to do things. Whereas it's a lot easier for them to train them as they're going, with all the updated techniques and types of things that may be necessary in that given field. But not only being trainable, but they want to have students who are able to follow through. They want them to be responsible. They want them to be on time. And they want to be able to trust them that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. So really the trades, the employers were pretty straightforward. They go through a lot of people. One of the things that they talked about is they want to make sure that their applicants are drug free. They've passed a high school or they have a high school diploma. And it's very important for them to have algebra. And I asked them why, and they were just saying that the abstract thinking of algebra is something that you have to have in that field. Living environment. When we touched on the living environment, the student had an eye-opening experience with the cost associated with what he considered a decent place to live and the upkeep of that place. It was important for him to be kind of close to his parents, which was surprising for me, but he said he may need their support in terms of little things like washing clothes, little things that he may need from them. And so he didn't want to be too far away from his parents. The nature of being in the trades of the job is such that, he could be working anywhere in the city. So he wanted to make sure that he was close to a freeway to be able to get wherever he needed to go. And he could have looked at housing that was less expensive, but he thought it was better to be in a suburban setting where he felt that it would be safer. So the living environment piece, after looking at a lot of different properties, a lot of different neighborhoods, he found one that he thought he could manage based upon the budgeting, which brings us to the next part. The budget was a great exercise for him, and it was useful for the student because it was based off of figures that were real. In talking to some people who supplied the apprenticeship training, they gave him concrete numbers on how much money he can make per month, the first year, the second year, the third year, the fourth year, and then how much he could expect to make after he gained his certification. So we wrote down all those figures and came up with an amount. And based upon that, he was able to really take a good hard look at some of the expenses that you have to have, that everyone has to have, like your gas, your electric. You have to have gas for your car and upkeep of the car and just all those things. And it allowed us to ask some questions. Like, okay, you want cable television with HBO and Cinemax and all that stuff, but is that more important? Or, do you want to have a cell phone with unlimited data? Because maybe you can go over your parents' house or record some things or find a different way, a $10 subscription to Netflix or something like that. So those were some of the conversations that we had that were really good, in terms of budgeting, his money. Some of the measurable goals that we talked about were that he needed to complete a financial literacy course offered at the school that allowed him to expand on his lessons in budgeting. And that encompasses credit, banking, different saving instruments. The student will also make the necessary connections with apprenticeship opportunities to ensure he is qualified after graduation. And just some of those qualifications is making sure he has a valid driver's license, making sure he can pass a drug test, make sure he has all his paperwork in, make sure his diploma or he's on track to receive his diploma. Those are all things that he needs to make sure that he's doing to be accepted into an apprenticeship program, but also to help get his family involved too, in the process to support the student. And they can also help hold him accountable and encourage him. Like I said before, he has to have a driver's license and so many hours of practice, and the family's in a perfect position to be able to support him to do those things. So in wrapping up, the transition process was a very extensive activity that needs to be done with every student, whether they have a disability or not. The most important aspect of the transition process was getting the student to begin to take ownership and be an active participant in their future. That was probably the most important thing, is as we transition from me leading it to him leading it, him asking questions and him being proactive. That was probably the biggest thing, the self-advocacy, because it's a skill that has to be developed and refined by students prior to graduation. And what I found out is the trades, that it's a great alternative to college. If a student has the ability, and the aptitude, their earning potential is on par with someone who has a master's degree over time. So if you get in early enough and you can stick to it and you can, continue to grow and learn in that field, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities and there's a lot of jobs available. And that's something that he really liked, was he wouldn't be pigeonholed into one position. I mean, once he gets there, a carpenter, you can do multiple things. An electrician, you can do multiple things. You can, go into solar and be on the cutting edge of solar power and installing solar panels and all this other stuff. There's just so many things that you can do. And the money is really, really good. So that was pretty much it for the transition, portion of it. And it was a really, really good experience for me. Hopefully it was a good experience for the student as well. And that wraps up my synopsis on this assignment. Thanks.